Hey YouTube, JGreen302. I guess I'll be calling this Solar Design and Components Part 2 a discussion. I actually made notes. I'm treating this as I learn and go. I'm sharing it, but I'm also video documenting my own notes and thoughts. And I'm sharing what I am learning and explaining my end goals so that simplify, take everything I've done and just hand it over so that you guys get a clue. So here we go. 4 15-watt solar panels, 12-volt DC, running to a 10-amp charge controller that charges the battery, attaching a 200-watt power inverter and using it to run battery chargers and LED lights. Here's where we're at. Once I'd set up the battery and the inverter, I ran 2 lamps in the battery charger from 5 p.m. until around midnight and just basically drew off the battery. No problems. The following day, the paint on the PVC had dried, and I assembled the panels and got everything put together, and I set it outside facing the sun, tilted to angled, attached it to the charge controller, and then attached everything to the battery so that the solar would start charging the battery. I got that installed around noon, so I only had about 5 hours of solar panel charging on the battery. I had run the lights in the battery charger from 5 till around midnight. The next morning, I ran 1 lamp from 8 a.m. until 2 a.m. with 5 hours of solar charging. And then today, I ran the lamp from 8 a.m. pretty much, and it's still running. Only now, as of about 30 minutes ago, I'm on a new setup. What I noticed was that even with leaving the inverter on and with running the lights and only getting 5 hours of solar charge, I actually barely touched the battery. So basically, off that old crappy car battery, it is quite conceivable that I could have probably run for quite a while, at least with basic lighting. The panels just give me the ability to restore the energy that I'm drawing off of it. So here's a couple of things that I did. In the process, what I did is I got a inline DC monitor, and I placed that from in between the solar panel connections. So the line coming in from all 4 solar panels, I attached it in line there, and then I sent it to the charge regulator so that I could kind of visually keep track of about how much power was coming in from the solar panels and comparing it to, was it direct sunlight, was it a cloudy day, etc. That's my goal, and I'm going to start monitoring that. But here's a couple of things that I wanted to just pass along from an educational point. You basically, if you have a 12-volt system and you want to do more than 1 battery, you want to run them in parallel. I kept saying series for some reason. Parallel is when you hook positive to positive to positive to positive and negative to negative to negative, and then you attach the top battery positive and the bottom battery negative, treating the whole thing like it's a great big 12-volt battery. When you hook it in series, you make connections between the batteries from the positive to the negative, and every time you do that, you double the voltage. So you can take 2 12-volt batteries, and on any dump truck, anybody that's worked on one, two wired up in series will give you a 24-volt system. So you have to understand that basic voltage doubling and how you wire. So I wanted to make a note about that and clarify that. What I did today, based on the results that I'd already gotten and some more homework, I went to Walmart and actually got 3 Marine Deep Cycle batteries, $81 a piece. 125 amp hours per battery. So call it 80 and 80, 160. So about $240. I got 375 amp hours. I might have had 45 amp hours with that car battery. So I made a huge upgrade, and I did all three at once, and I did it so that I had matched batteries. And I'll report on that later. One of the things that I noticed in my homework is that when you set everything up, the solar panels can charge, but whenever, every once in a while, you want to stop and slam house power in a full battery charge and fully charge those batteries. Basic battery maintenance is something that you want to do, because this is an emergency system. We're not off-grid living. It's not built to run this house on, solar panels. It's meant to be able to provide lights, rechargeable batteries, maybe a hot plate for an extended amount of time and potentially indefinitely. It's all about managing how much you put a load on it and how much sunlight you've got, and a little monitoring and you have to pay attention to what you're doing. And the only way I know to do something like that is, like I always said, I'm going to have my lamps and a couple other items that I use every day, and I'm going to force myself to run all of that off this solar system, so that month after month I build up tips and tricks and learn, when to pay attention to the batteries, how long will the system run, and how much of a draw will it put on the system if I have 4 days of rain, so that when I do need it, I've got months and months and months, could be years, of using it, so that I understand what to pay attention to and how to pay attention to it. And I thought I'd mention that. Monthly battery maintenance. So one of the things that I will do is, I've got the distilled water for battery maintenance, and about once a month I plan to disconnect the system and pop the caps and make sure that the fluids in the batteries are maintained, because the constant discharge and charge cycles tends to cook off some of that fluid, and it has to be replaced. You can also there's what do they call it? It's something you can check the gravity of the electrolyte solution that's in the batteries if you want to get that intense with it. But these are brand new batteries, so for right now I'm kind of going with this. My next thought is, right now I'm running a 200 watt modified sine wave inverter, which I haven't even begun to tax with the basic stuff that I'm trying to do, which is good. But there's three types. There is a standard, just whatever power inverter. There's a modified sine wave inverter, and there's a pure sine inverter. Pure sine obviously being the most expensive, because it is the most like commercial grade clean power. If you're going to run sensitive electronics, PCs and things like that, you're going to want clean power. So my intentions are with the capacity now is, I've got the regular ones are real easy. So you run lights and stupid things on that. Modified, you can run less sensitive stuff or slightly more sensitive stuff, and then save your pure sine wave for your highly sensitive electronic equipment, so that you have options where you don't have to go out and buy all of it in one pure sine wave and then eat the cost. A little common sense goes a long way. Not bad if you understand what each of them do and set everything up. I mean, you can have three sitting there and it's just wiring, folks. Here's a thought, and I just want to mention this. One battery is fine. If you're playing with one battery, it's just like working on a car. But once you start getting into 3, 4, or more batteries, where the amperage starts going up, and you're playing with some pretty potent DC power, all I can tell you is, do not underestimate the potential for a bad thing happening. Be very due diligent. Be very careful. Make sure that you don't ever short a high amperage DC system. These big battery banks that they use it on a commercial level, one mistake, one slip of your concentration working on a positive cable on a string of those batteries, and it hits something that grounds, it kills people. I'm going to say that again. It kills people. Be very, very careful. Pure common sense will save your ass. Don't fuck up. Common sense. Don't ever take it for granted. LEDs and limited power. Okay, so here's my goal. Here's what I'm after, and here's how I'm approaching it. I could sign up for a class on history, and it will cost me about $235 to $270 at the local community college, plus textbooks, and I could go to class for a semester and get credits for a history class. For that same amount of money, I can buy a couple of deep cycle batteries, a couple of pieces of gear, and a couple of little panels, and I can do what I'm doing right now. I can get an education in alternative power. I can get an education on basic DC circuitry or DC systems. I can have lighting, because now that I've paid for the investment from, I think the first solar panel that was ever made still works. I don't ever plan to discharge the battery systems very much at all, and I will maintain them with battery chargers and some other things, and be almost exceptional with the battery maintenance, because I will use it for the learning part on a day-to-day basis. The pure beauty of this is that if the lights go out, all that equipment's there. I've been playing with it day after day. I've been using it daily. What I learned about Genghis Khan won't do shit for me. But what I do in this class that I teach myself for the same cost could be extremely valuable. And I guess that's what I'm at day 3 in my class that I am teaching myself as I self-teach and go get the components. This is my thinking at this point. I've got 3 batteries set up. I've got it. I've got the basic storage capacity spec'd out for what I think will do a fairly decent job. I plan on getting a small hot plate so that I can actually pull some wattage, and I'll probably pick up some better inverters, and I'll keep tweaking with the system. But for the most part, I think I got what I need. Until I get more data, I can't do the rest of the evaluation. So this is like I'm 3 days in. Here's some things that I've learned. Here's my impressions, and here's my observations. I might start looking pretty closely more at some LED bulbs to see about putting some aside and like an emergency contingency, and start looking at things like some spare wiring in case I need to wire some other things up, and have some spare cables, and maybe some redundancy of the backup equipment, and check how many lamps I've got, things like that, that should the electric go out for a month, what I want to know is, could the system run, recharge itself, give me lighting, allow me to cook on a hot plate, if nothing else to boil water and make food, recharge batteries, and kind of do so almost without noticing it. That's what I'm after. I think I'm on a good start. I am not trying to run the house on solar power. I'm not trying to cut my electric bill. I just want a nice, small, unobtrusive little setup that, unless you follow that extension cord around to where it goes, you never even know it's there. Not a bad setup for around $300. And maybe $400. I'm into it now. How much money have you thrown into your prepping? For $400 to save candles, to save fuel for cooking, we'll see how it works out. But here's my impressions, here's my thoughts, and here's where I'm at day 3. Thanks for listening. Talk at you.